Hello and welcome. I'm Jerome Chang, which means it's another edition of Tempo Time. Joining me as always, first and foremost, Chelsea Leite, who has been up late because of these West Coast games
Wow,
and
God.
recaps. Chels, how are you doing this morning, first and foremost?
Look, I rolled out of bed about half an hour before we were going to do this.
That's
made
right.
some coffee. My hair is still from yesterday. Hashtag
It,
Olivia
it's
Dean
it's
concert.
9 a.m. in the West Coast, you
It's
know?
9 a.m. in the West Coast.
Oh, you went to Olivia Dean?
We can talk about my night.
But I'm going tonight. This is the rare
No, it was
occurrence
so good.
where we both have an Olivia Dean son and daughter.
Yes,
We're
oh my
not split
God.
between. Yeah.
True. I was yesterday. I was both Olivia Dean daughter and working son.
It's perfect.
Yes, I did cover the Tempo game last night, and I went.
You
to
did
Olivia
cover
Dean.
the Tempo game.
I was really Hannah Montana-ing my life yesterday.
You got the best of both worlds.
I really did. So the Tempo had the Aneesah Morrow. We'll talk about Aneesah Morrow, but the Tempo had her introductory press conference at 7:30.
That's right.
So I did 7:30 Aneesah, 7:50 Sandy, was already ready, full makeup, everything. Hop in an Uber, go
Nice.
to Scotiabank Arena. Olivia
Buzz.
Dean set starts
Buzz.
at 9.
Another buzz. Yes.
Did Olivia Dean. 10 o'clock the Tempo game started, so, she pulls it up on her phone.
I'm like
Be
in the
the
middle of my
man
hoop
I
run
need,
with. I'm in the middle of my hoop run with Will at this time, and then thankfully at the community center they're playing the Tempo game in the back. So anytime I'm not playing, I'm just watching in the background, and then finishing the run. Or after the run, we finish at 11, just watching outside of the Waterfront Community Center in the dark on Will's phone, just watching the third and fourth quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then Olivia ended around like 10:45. Halftime starts right as she's ending the concert.
Perfect. Oh, so convenient of Olivia. Thank you,
So
Olivia.
convenient. She knew my sketch.
Yeah.
I skirt home, make it in time for the third quarter.
Olivia
watch-
saw Tempo are up by 1. I got to get home and watch the rest of this game. You know?
Apparently she was at Woody's after. Which queen. Those who know.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I get home, finish the game, make it to the press conference after, write my article.
Look
boom,
at you. Boom.
Boom. She can really have it all. I did get a text from the Tempo PR being like, how did you do that? And I was like, impeccable timing.
And it's because of, I'm assuming, the specific Tempo PR that's asking, who would know? But that's fantastic. Look at you. You did it all. You can have it all.
You can really have it all.
A person who I'm assuming had a little bit of a quieter night is the third person joining us on the show.
Zulfi could have been at Olivia Dean. Do not judge him like that.
Well, he didn't mention that he was there also. That's the only reason why I didn't jump to that conclusion, because I know Zulfi's about it. Zulfi Sheikh of Raptors Republic, fellow colleague on this Nation network.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten a chance to watch Zulfi's breakdowns through Tempo Talk, it's such a good, concise way of summarizing these games. But not only does he do that so well, he, especially at a time where the Tempo right now are in a 7-game losing streak and have fallen to the point of being 10-20 on the season right now, it can be really hard to extrapolate things from it. And Zulfi does such a great job of finding those small details, things to look out for, players, how they're trending, all of that. But Zulfi, we really wanted you to come on with us at some point this season, so we're so glad you're here. Zulfi, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. Thank you both for having me on. As they say, long-time listener, first-time caller in. No, I'm happy to be here. And like you guys said, unfortunately, my night wasn't as exciting as the two of you. I wasn't playing basketball or at Olivia Dean. I was listening to Olivia Dean at home, but I wasn't there. My night was this. I had to chug a couple of these to stay up.
I saw you tweeting about getting to tip off and you're already kind of fading out, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, these 10 p.m. starts. Maybe it's just because I feel older now, or I don't know what it is,
No,
but just getting to them is almost harder than being at them.
Yeah.
Waiting for that 10 p.m. tip off, knowing it's dark around you and it's already
especially if it's when it's a home game, especially on the media end, you're kind of running off the adrenaline. You've been there for hours and you're just getting to it. You're not sitting stationary and just waiting for the game to start.
On your couch, comfy at home.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's
And,
at the time you're already starting to wind down. No, I feel that. And having to do them on the Raptors side, I mean, don't get me wrong. The Raptors usually do their West Coast road trip in like January, and it's truly because it's just like cold and you're never seeing the sun and it's dark. But yeah, something about the summer. Now the summer West Coast, I feel you. It's like it's rough. And it's
We're
like,
not built for it. No.
Even doing like Aneesah and Monica, like that intro presser, and then Sandy, and then when you finish those, you're looking at the time. There's still like 2 hours before tip off, and it's already 8 p.m. I was like, maybe I should have just done that instead.
You could got an opener. You got a good couple good tracks in. Yeah, it'd have been great. Yeah. But we are brought here together, from the group chat to the live, and the group chat in this case is the people who hang out at Tempo practice. But so as I mentioned, the Tempo are now on a 7-game losing streak. They are in a tough stretch, especially in the second half or the back half of the season after WNBA All-Star. They're playing some top-tier teams, and they're doing so with a continually injured... Oh, the hat's back. A continually injured... Gifted, by the way. Yes. Gifted to media. Yes. For the vibes. We knew when Chelsea and I talked about it, post All-Star going into it would be a tough break. So I wouldn't say necessarily that things are unexpected here, but still, of course, we do need to talk about it. But things have happened along the way too. Things that the Tempo are hoping are going to change things for the better now, but also for the long term. And that big thing that we're going to start off with is the Tempo trade for Aneesah Morrow. Aneesah Morrow traded to the team for
Getting
the
Tempo's pronunciation right, guys. Morrow.
Yes, yeah, it is spelled Morrow, but we were informed by Tempo PR that it is pronounced Morrow, so we're going to work very hard on getting that. I almost slipped up the first time around. But
good.
Yes, Aneesah Morrow traded for the Tempo's 2028 second-round pick and the rights to Maria Klundikova, who did not report to the team. So, honestly, I mean, as Toronto basketball fans, this feels like a bit of a rarity of we traded for need and we did not give up a first-round pick for said need. And it is it is a promising prospect. Really lines up well with Kiki Rice's schedule and expansion team. But Chels, I'm going to start with you. You have been actually screaming the name Aneesah Morrow for a minute now, and we'll say you manifested the moment in the trade here. What was your reaction to finally seeing that happen?
Okay, first of all, imagine being a Toronto basketball watcher and being like, we need a front court player, which is a very common sentiment for Toronto basketball folk. And then they just trade in the first season of need for a front court player.
Hey, you need a front court player? We'll get you a front court player.
You one. I was like, unprecedented right here. What is happening? No, I mean, my reaction to the trade was that like Aneesah, was not shocked, obviously, because you're hearing things that are happening behind the scenes. You're also, like, in the sense of, like, the WNBA trade deadline, as I feel like we've talked about, is... I feel so unserious with this hat, but I kind of love it. The WNBA trade deadline is, like, not... it's not really a factor, or it hasn't been for a long time. And so you're hearing, you start hearing these rumors and you're like, but like, is anybody going to move on it? Is anybody going to do anything? And more and more as the years go on, especially now with this new CBA, there's more money, there's more cap flexibility, draft picks are more, valuable than ever. It kind of felt like, okay, maybe something could happen. But I just didn't know if, like, the Tempo were going to, like, act now or be more of the Raptors variety of being like, let's wait to free agency. Because we all know that that's a very Toronto Raptors pilled thought of, like, let's wait for the offseason kind of vibes. But I saw the trade. I was not surprised. What I was surprised about was the price. And that was in a good way. Like, honestly, like, this front office cooked with this trade. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that, I saw the price and I was like,
shout out Monica, shout out Eli. Like, they did their thing.
Yeah, like,
for their first ever move too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You get a player, you trade for need, direct need, not just need, and not just an expiring contract. She's under contract for next season. They have a team option for the season after that, and then she would be a restricted free agent for the season after that. Like,
which takes us to 2029.
29,
Almost
yeah.
the end of this decade.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Then, on top of that, there was, rumors going around about the Tempo being willing to part with a first-round draft pick for the next, and in the WNBA, you can only trade draft picks for the next 2 years. So you can't, it's not like the NBA where you can trade like a 2030 draft pick. No, you're only working this year with 2027 and 2020.
So this is why Sam Presti is not a WNBA general manager.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so earlier in the week, I'm sitting here and I'm like, do not.
You were not alone. I think everyone was.
I was like,
waiting.
no.
Yeah.
Because you think about the drafts in the next 2 years. Now, I would have been slightly more willing to part with a 2027 first-round draft pick. But at the same time, I was like, no, like, they're in
This
such a
really
good
hurts our
position.
Sarah Strong campaign.
Yeah, it hurts and it hurts the Juju campaign.
Yeah.
It hurts, some of that. So, but at the same time, I was like, okay, like, if we're thinking about strength of overall draft, 2028 is looking stronger. So I'm like, okay, if you're no pun intended, stronger. But yeah, so I'm like, if you're looking, maybe you part with the 2027, but at the same time I was like, just no, like, I don't know. It just didn't, something in my gut. So then I saw that they only had to give away a 2028 second round pick, which, I mean, as much as draft picks are becoming more relevant, the second round still isn't entirely important. And you give away the rights to a player in Maria Klindikova who, one, didn't report this year and has, there's no promise that she'll report next year or the year after. The situation is that she plays in Russia, and essentially her Russian team is being like, we'll pay you more if you don't go to the WNBA. So it's like, and that's historically has happened. Like, Diana Taurasi missed a season for that exact reason. So it's like...
Yeah, Aneesah Morrow, like, for what she has already contributed since her rookie season, in her sophomore season now, and what already appears to be flashes of a real jump in her production, especially if she's given a bigger role, you got her for nothing.
For nothing. And that's the thing. So I saw the price and I was like, what? Okay. I'm down. I'm in. Like, let's go. Like, hype.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, overall, just great trade. Great. I mean, there's a little bit of question about, like, the potential of Aneesah Morrow. I think that she definitely has the potential to turn into the player that the Tempo are hoping she can. We kind of saw flashes of that even last night. Her first shot is a shot from three. If she can expand her shot to be consistent like that, she becomes a 3-level scorer. She can continue to, develop her rebounding and her scoring under the rim. She's a little bit undersized, but at the same time, she makes up for that in hustle.
You know what? If there was at least we got to commit to the Toronto basketball front court lore of getting ourselves an undersized big. So we're at least consistent on that front.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was it? Vision 6'1" is what we'll call it.
Yeah. Vision 6'1". My other was it's either Vision 6'1" or like Vision 6'4" sometimes.
Sure.
We can find a happy meet like Vision 6'2.5".
Yeah. Well, you touched upon it. Aneesah does make her debut last night in limited minutes. I think it was only 16 minutes. Finishes with 8 and 5, but you're already seeing flashes off the bench too. You're already seeing flashes of her production. I mean, the rebounding's there, but there's also like a certain relentlessness that comes with her on the floor, and I think especially in this latter stage of like the Tempo season, you can feel at times maybe the morale waning a little bit. Some of the body language on the floor isn't great. It's hard to keep up, that kind of effort when your team is continually injured, continually being depleted, and then facing some really strong teams. So sometimes you kind of need, and excuse my language, a bit of a motherfucker out there. And it feels like... And it feels like Aneesah brings that kind of intensity, at least in the short bursts. But Zulfi, you talked about it already on Tempo Talk. It was, again, a great episode that you released this morning. But tell us a little bit about what you saw out there and kind of already the promises delivered in a short spurt. Yeah,
I think you kind of nailed it, Jerome, in saying she played with a bit of an edge. And the Tempo right now with the kind of skid they've been on. They need a bit of that. They need a player like her who just came off the bench and immediately looked hungry. Like you mentioned, Chelsea, she was opportunistic with that first shot. She takes that above the break three. And in her intro presser, she said she wants to do that. She wants to prove she's a 3-level scorer. And then she said she wants to prove she can put the ball on the deck. What does she do a couple possessions later? She grabs 2 rebounds on the second one. She goes into a bully drive, turns into a finish at the rim. That's something you're going to hope to see more from her. The Tempo don't really have a ton of consistent finishing up close. And she also, like you said, a bit undersized, so that's kind of been up and down for her. So if that can be a thing for the Tempo, well, then that'll be really important for what they want to do in terms of a half-court offensive like engine.
It opens up if she is able to be more consistent with the 3. Yeah.
100%, yeah. So I think like in terms of just being opportunistic out there, being hungry, it felt like a fresh burst of energy, which with the players that have been on this roster that have to navigate through all these injuries, with players coming in and out, the roles changing, having someone who's motivated and excited about proving herself, bringing in that energy, especially for these next 14 or so games, I think will hopefully be a catalyst to kind of trend in the right direction, or at least prove what this team wants to accomplish with this type of move. You guys kind of spoke about it too. Like Monica kept referring to the fact that her Aneesah's age and team control was a huge factor in why they made this deal. Obviously, it was on pennies on the dollar as well, but she's the third player on this roster, 23 or under. Like they for as young as this franchise is, they were a team that kind of constructed themselves with more of a veteran presence because they wanted to be competitive sooner rather than later, and they wanted to keep Sandy's playoff streak alive, right? But like with the way the season has gone, maybe they're choosing to pivot a little bit here and kind of give themselves the flexibility of having building blocks towards the future. So now you have a Kiki Rice, you have an Aneesah Morrow that you want to build around, or at least kind of see in these next couple of seasons. And I think that's what you kind of saw out of this first game, a player that has a higher ceiling, maybe in a bigger role. And if you can see some of those points flourish or blossom, then you really start to see what the Tempo we're looking for out of this kind of a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like everything both of you just nailed there. It is a breath of fresh air just to have Aneesah even in those minutes. So I'm really looking forward to how she performs moving forward. Once she actually gets to practice with the team, once she actually gets to learn a little bit more of it. When she came in initially, I believe it was the afternoon of the first Valkyries game. So it was like
Sunday.
It was like way too soon to get in it. And even as you wrote, Chelsea, Coach Brandella had commented that there are moments where it's pretty clear that Aneesah doesn't know the offense, and rightfully so, doesn't know it so soon.
God, you read my stuff?
Yeah, of course. Like, how else do I get prep for these shows? I read your stuff and I watch Zulfi's stuff. Like, that's how I do this. But, yeah, as you wrote, Coach Brandello commented that, you know, clearly, like, Aneesah just got here. There are moments where she looks a little disconnected from the floor, but, like, as expected, but she liked the minutes that she saw. And, yeah, I think to all those points, for a team that's depleted, and even a team, even if, like, fully healthy on the floor, like, you just kind of need more of, because we even saw it earlier in the season when you have Slim still in the lineup. One of the things that I felt was really lacking for a period, for as good as, say, like, Marina Mabry is, but, like, a team without, say, Kiki Rice, is that downhill motion, that penetration, and that pressure inside. And you saw bits of that there, which actually brings me to the other player that I had in mind is Kiki Rice returns to the lineup. Woo. And it's been a bit of a slow coming back into the fold, but she does have, I would say, arguably her best game in the first game against the Valkyries. That was, and if I could pull up over here, a like 16.5 rebound, 3 assists night. That is a game without Marina Mabry, who is out for that game with her kind of lingering neck injury, I believe it is.
She's been tossed around a little bit and continued to get tossed around yesterday.
There was some moments where I felt her pain on the floor, just seeing her grimacing through it. But
got smacked by Kia Stokes on that one play and just hit her head on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's honestly I can just sense that the scout is just like physically defend her, which like I get, she's a very like she can shake off defenses pretty well and then get to her spot, and she's a quick release, but like I feel for her.
She hits walls out there. Once she just steps within the arc, she's hitting walls.
Yeah, and that's rough, and I can sense her frustration. I mean, I think Anyways,
we'll get to that afterward, but going back to Kiki right now. So Kiki is back in the lineup. I think we got to see what she was capable of doing before her grade 3 ankle sprain. And I think there are flashes of it in here. I guess we'll start with you, Zulfi, on this one. So what are you seeing so far? It seems like there are some elements of, I can't tell if it's her just kind of struggling getting back into her rhythm, or maybe just the same thing that can happen to any rookie where they kind of hit a bit of a wall. What are you seeing that's kind of working, and maybe what do you maybe need to see, or what would help her kind of get back into that form that like we got really excited about at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think it's a good question in the sense that I feel like a lot of where she's the most confident as an offensive player is still there. She's able to get downhill for the most part. She's trusting her dribble. But it's just that her burst isn't necessarily where it was towards the start of the season. And obviously so coming back from a grade 3 ankle sprain and then missing basically a month and a half. Like we've seen some of these like $10 move 1 cent finishes that have happened. Those Euro steps in traffic that she's been able to do for like early on in the season, those are just falling a little short now. She had a couple of those last night as well, which we knew early on in the season were money for her. So I think her burst is going to need to slowly kind of come back. But on the flip side, even though these shots haven't necessarily fallen, I felt like it's almost forced her to be more of a self-creator with her dribble on the perimeter. We've seen a couple more step-back opportunities from her kind of self-creating there. And I think if you're looking for a silver lining within that, that's something that I've really liked in terms of her return so far. Like you said, that 16-point game, I think it proves that I'm not really worried about her offense being there, and it's going to kind of continue to be there. The one part I do want to see is, like to your point about rookies hitting that wall, is how does she look as a playmaker and a defender? And I think that's where we've kind of seen the speed of the WNBA get away from her a little bit. And to be fair to her, again, she was starting before she got injured. Now she's coming off the bench. She was hitting a flow, and to be plucked out of the lineup for about a month and a half is tough for anyone, let alone a rookie. But we've seen some of the issues in terms of her playmaking. She's been a little slow on some of these reads, and the passes haven't been as confident. And on the defensive side, like, she's fouling a lot more now. She's not necessarily in the right spots. But again, a lot of that has to do with the lack of continuity and just the familiarity with being out there and what role she's in now coming off the bench. So I think, like, I'm confident in terms of what I see from her offensively and how that's going to continue. It's just the little point guardy things that you want to see, right? Like being a playmaker, especially because when she can do that, it'll take the burden off of a Marina or a Julia Aleman with ball handling. Being a point of attack defender can help those players as well. I think that's what you kind of want to see from her. So it'll take a bit of time, like in terms of looking for solutions. I really do think it's going to be reps, and it's spending these next 14 games just getting back into shape, feeling comfortable being out there. And I think slowly we'll see a lot of that kind of come to where it was before she got hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's what it is. It's funny because we had such an excitement about Kiki starting the season, and it feels like, even though, like you said, it's only about a month and a half, it feels like it's been a year or something that we haven't seen her play. So to kind of, like, you know, in a very public service announcement, like, allow me to reintroduce myself, like, Chelsea, like, kind of remind us exactly, like, what Kiki brings to this game, especially when she's, like, at her best, and what she had already been doing in the season so far, like, prior to the injury.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, just right off the bat, like, to kind of go off what Zulfi was saying, it's like to miss a month and a half for any player is one thing, but to miss a month and a half for a player who has been playing for nearly a year straight, I think is a lot different. Like, Kiki was playing high-level hoops at UCLA, gets like a week off, gets drafted, comes to Toronto, continues to play, right? So
yeah,
it's like
main
you're
piece in the NCAA champion team.
Like
yeah,
played
UCLA,
to the final game of March Madness, and then, you know, immediately had to be a big impact player for a team. And a lot of rookies, like especially in the first round, like don't necessarily have to do this. Sometimes they go to teams where, you know, sometimes they're not necessarily, you know, then you have players like, say, like the Paige Beckers and the whoever's that are, you know, immediately the centerpiece. But, you know, it's also a thing where it's like she's playing high level continuously, and then you just break that flow for a month and a half, and you deal with an injury you've never had before, and you have to be reintegrated into this team whose lineup is constantly changing because of injuries. So yeah, like that in a sense I think is something to keep in mind as well. But to answer your actual question, yeah, I mean, Kiki is someone who has developed quite a lot, I think, since she first came on the scene at UCLA. She came into, you know, that spot as she came into her college career as someone who, you know, could drive, who was a very tough guard, defender, and then was kind of molded into someone who could shoot a little bit more, whose game kind of expanded beyond maybe just like a traditional guard, and then ends up helping lead this team to a national championship, develops quite a lot in that. And so initially when Kiki was drafted, in my head, just it was kind of like, okay, like you've seen all this development from her in college. So that to me was like a sign of like she could develop so much more as a young prospect, especially like under Sandy Brondello, especially under this system where, she's going to be a big piece for this team and they want her to be like a point guard. They want her to drive. They want her to shoot. Like Brondello has said many times, like, I want Kiki to shoot more, like shoot more, shoot more, shoot more. And so I think like with her, to me, she's always been like a sponge. Like she's always been someone, and her teammates will say the same thing. Like you can tell her anything and she'll immediately be like, okay, and just like go and do it. And so to me, I think like she almost has to relearn a lot of what her role is, especially like I said, because this lineup is changing so much. But I think the little struggles that we're seeing currently is one, her readapting into the system, but also just trying to figure out what the next iteration of her role is for this current team. And I think the benefit of like having the off season and retooling the roster going into next, and like her having a bit more of a solid understanding of what her role will help her quite a lot. But at the same time, like, I think she's just a sponge, and I think you just have to like remind yourself that, because she came into the league as a very league ready pro prospect. I think she was one of those players in that first round where you're like, you're getting someone who can immediately make an impact. She did that. And I feel like a lot of times people forget that like they're still rookies and there's still a wall to be hit. And even if you miss a month and a half because of an injury, you still could hit that wall. So yeah, I think like
she was showing a lot of flashes. Like, I mean, one thing that we were all really surprised in a great way about Kiki was her poise and her ability to be so versatile. Like, I think when you look at the Tempo roster when it is as healthy as it can be, because it hasn't been healthy all season, it almost can be a bit of a tale of two worlds, where when you have like ball dominant guards like a Slim or a Marina Mabry, that feels that it leans a little more toward like a traditional WNBA style. But then when you look at a lot of these European players in terms of like the Julie Allemands, Maria Condes, Laura Ishkaita, like Niara Sabali, like that Euro-centric type of basketball is a bit of a different, like more like of a sharing type of game. And what you noticed was like Kiki was able to kind of like work in both styles. Like whether you needed Kiki to be a little more ball dominant, and you mentioned like Coach Brondello like encouraging more. I think that's a lot of like what I was thinking, and I was really relieved to see with that first Golden State Valkyries game was the team needs her to be aggressive right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's just not enough scoring around the board or not enough pressure. And so they absolutely need her, even though, and it's like a lot to ask of a rookie who's like, again, coming back from injury and going through all these pressures. But all of it to say, yeah, like there's something about Kiki that we saw early that she kind of just fits in all forms. And yeah, it's good to see her back. I think absolutely the team needs her now, and of course is a centerpiece for the future. Another piece that has essentially been, I mean, it is the Tempo's all-star in Marina Mabry. You know, how can we get Marina Mabry better shots? Like, this is a thing that, you know, for all her accolades that she has achieved this season, you can obviously see the adjustments made about it, but also the adjustments because for many stretches, she is the one real go-to scorer or the go-to shot creator. And I actually remember having this conversation with Zulfi after, I forget which game it was specifically, but we were just talking about just like, oof, like not anything against her, but like Marina looks tired. Marina looks like she's just like going through it, like trying to like create these moments for herself. Like, I know that we saw the 53-point game, but that, you know, you can't expect her to just, you know, average 30 and pull us out of these holes every time. But we were talking through it, and then Zulfi brought up a really great stat that has been starting in the WNBA since last season, which is gravity. And Marina Mabry right now leads the league in gravity with 13.0. Second to her is Sonia Citron with 11.2. Last year, like for some context, Paige Beckers led the league with 13.3. Funny enough, second to her was still Marina Mabry at 13.2. So there's just like a factor of like Marina Mabry, I think, with all her scoring ability, especially with the long range shooting, like will always command gravity, especially on the off ball, where Marina is significantly higher at that point than second afterward. But there is something that actually, like in seeing that Paige was number one last season and Marina leads the league right now this season, that feels a little bit of a parallel between the two because they are both in situations where there's not really a lot of other options. And so teams really just like lean so hard in covering them. That said, for as much as we can lament like all the pressure that she's getting, what can the tempo do to open things up for Marina? I'll start with you, Chels. Like, what can we do to help our girl? You know?
Oh man, not to get too into this part of it, but man, something about the officiating this season has not been ideal.
Sure, yeah.
And it's not like that's not obviously something they could do about it. But I honestly I just kind of wanted to make that point off the bat. And I feel like sometimes when you like talk about officiating, especially with the team that you follow or cover or a fan of, whatever, can kind of be like a little homery. But at the same time, like I'm watching that game yesterday, and I'm watching the Minnesota game, and I'm watching the Vegas game, and it's like this girl is getting tossed, thrown, slammed, and I get she's the number one option. She's the main scoring. Like obviously, the top of any tempo scout is going to be stop Marina Mabry from scoring 53 points.
But how do you stop her is another question, and officiating is kind of letting them get away with it.
Exactly. And it's like, you know, there's this big discourse about officiating in the WNBA, and, you know, and I've obviously, you know, you're watching all of these games, and you're like, whoo, this is rough. And it's like, it's on both ends. Like, she's getting calls called on her. She's getting, you know, then on the other side, she's getting absolutely bodied and things aren't going her way. She's getting tossed to the floor. She's frustrated. Her, you know, her neck is, you know, then she's having these injuries, and it's like, it's just like, I think I had this moment in Chicago where I was watching her, and like she's handling all of this so well, but it's like man, like one person can only hold, and I think the idea was that she would share that with Slim, that like that responsibility, and then
they talked about it together on Sue Bird's podcast, how they were able to share that load. Yeah, exactly.
Which like, yeah, that would make it easier, but then now Slim is hurt, and so now she's been thrown into this situation where now it's her. And so first of all, I just want to like have grace and like remember that she's a human, and like be like, that's tough, like that's really tough. At the same time, yeah, how can they get her more options? I think floor spacing has been an issue this whole season. I think that there hasn't been, you know, we've had ups and downs of like communication and people knowing their spots, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the lineups have changed so much, and people aren't necessarily like, I think we've talked about this before too, but like, say for example an 82 game NBA season, there comes a point very early on where you can scientifically break down what
you can become Coach Darko Rajakovic.
Yes, literally. I was literally going to say, you can predict Darko's moves in a whole game. You can say, okay, 5 minutes into the, and this isn't true, I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head, but you can say, like, 5 minutes into the game, he's going to pull Scotty and put in this guy, and then this lineup of RJ and the bench are going to go, and then in the third quarter, he's going to, like, you can scientifically break that down. And sometimes and a coach like Sandy Brondello is in that same sense, where she usually has a very methodic rotation of players, and that has not been the case this year. And so then you're literally throwing spaghetti at the wall at this point and being like, who's available tonight? You have a 10-ish, 9-ish player rotation. Who's available, who can play. Who's available, yeah. And then the thing is, like, you go out there, pass to Marina. You go out there, create for Marina. And it's like, okay, but also you don't have much practice time because these games are so condensed. You aren't able to set lineups and be able to build communication and trust within those things. Everybody's roles are changing constantly because this person's being pulled off the bench and this person's being put in. And that lack of consistency, I think, is what's making it hard. And then the idea just ends up being, okay, give it to Marina.
Yeah.
And then she just like gets
the fact
bodied.
that she has to be a creator often, not just for herself and the rest of the team, has clearly worn on her and been easy to kind of adjust for defenses.
Yeah. So like, what's the solution? I mean, health, but you can't control that.
Sure.
It's a big one.
And I think her and Julie play really well together. So I think that is a situation where, that you build on that a little bit more. You make sure Julie's getting her the ball a little bit more. But then Julie is always a player she's very in tune with the flow of the game. And so if she sees someone like Maria going off, she's going to pass to Maria. If she sees someone, if someone's going off and shooting, she's going to get the ball to them. And so it's really
more
like
egalitarian. Again, it's like very more of the Eurocentric style of like you really read the rhythms and the flows of the game and not necessarily force the issue of like this is our main go-to and then like build off of there. So like that is very much Julie's side. Yeah.
On the flip side, that night of the 53-point game, I specifically remember Julie being like, there were so many times Maria was calling for the ball and she was like, nope, Marina's hot. Like,
right. Yes.
Go to her.
Absolutely.
So like it's back and forth. Right. So
No, for sure. And no, I think that's the thing. So many things that it feels like the team can do to help Marina feels like outside of the team itself. Like health is a huge issue, obviously. Some consistent officiating or at least like managing some of that would be great too. And that's why, again, we bring Zulfi on the show to like look for like small moments. I'd like to look a little bit at that 16-0 run that happened in the second quarter. I feel like, those are the kind of things that no team can sustain throughout a full game itself, but you would like to see more of, generally speaking, in those moments. Maybe like not a 16, but like an 8-0 run, 6-0 run, things like that help them stay in games. But it felt like, and again, you mentioned it on your show, that was kind of like an example of what the team wants to do. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that helps Marina as well?
Yeah, I think it's the idea of taking the burden off Marina needing to do, like you guys said, a bit of everything in terms of bringing the ball up, trying to create offense, whether it's moving off it herself or creating for herself. And when you saw within that 16-0 run, Marina didn't have to do a lot in that situation. She had that one play where she finished with a 2-point pull-up jumper, but it was off a turnover created by the defense first, where the team was moving fast. Julie brought it up. She flipped it to the opposite side where Marina worked into a pick and pop situation for it. But other than that, it was the rest of the players kind of doing the high wire act that the Tempo want to do, where they're playing faster. Laura steals an inbound pass off of Caitlin Chen, I believe. They go running the other way. And speaking of that European style, Jerome, like the four players that touched the ball on that possession before it ended in a Maria Conde 3 were the Euros. It was pinging around. It was very much the beautiful game stuff that you want to see and the Tempo are talking about in terms of what their vision is offensively. Where Marina Mabry, she's on the opposite side, like on the weak side, and all she's doing is occupying a couple defenders, and it allows the Tempo to ping the ball around and do what they want to do. So I think that's where the Tempo can really take advantage of something like Marina's gravity and making things happen. But a lot of it, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later as well, is like you have to start on the defensive end. If we go all the way back to training camp, this team talked about defense being their identity, but that just hasn't been the case for a lot of reasons, injuries being a big part of it as well, in terms of their scheme, maybe not executing it for a full 40 minutes for most of these games. I have a couple stats on that we can talk about later. But in terms of just like being able to turn defense into offense, I do think that's when the Tempo are at their best. And in that 16-0 run, you saw a lot of that happen. And you saw how when they do that, it really does make life easier for Marina for all the other reasons, because the other 30 minutes of the game, she has to be doing so much. I talked about maybe her being so exhausted to the point where she's not able to rebound as much anymore. She isn't able to make the type of reads that she normally wants to. And to both of your points, like Chelsea, you kind of nailed it with the whole officiating thing. Marina, like, do we remember she's an all-star? I just feel like there was a time where all-stars got
to
better
get those
whistles,
kind of calls.
right?
Yeah,
the memo hasn't the memo hasn't gone there apparently.
That's one of those things where like that's a side point, but like yeah, like she hasn't gone in the All-Star whistle. It's kind of made her more
with
tired.
Like gravity, like the most gravity.
Yeah.
Teams are close to her. That doesn't mean contact.
They're tugging on her jersey. They're kind of stopping her from
Slamming
getting
her to
other
the
top
ground,
locking
yeah.
her and stuff. Some of that is on her, where she like we talked about Brandon Ingram in the playoff for the Raptors, where like some of it is on you. You have to be able to fight through those things, but that's
Absolutely.
an exhausting way to play for a full season. And also the other ways the tempo, like to your question, Jerome, of how can they get her better shots, they may not be able to address that until later on. Whether that's bringing in a tough screener or a big center that she can pair in the pick and roll with. You saw a bit of it with Niara, but she's not really like that gonna pin you with a screen type of player. Or it's Marina developing her dribble a bit more and making it a bit more tighter of a handle where she can navigate through traffic. Those are things that are very difficult to address.
Having more
in
downhill
season.
players to at least like be able to kick out, and open it up would be great. Like missing Slim, I think there's so
100%.
many ways. I think the big takeaway, and I think he's in the chat right now, is Will and I saying over and over through the fourth quarter, "Wow, we really miss Slim. We just miss Slim so much." Like
so
Slim
many
would
of these problems are solved by
just
Slim.
bring Slim back in the mix. But actually, you did mention a name there, Zulfi, that I do want to talk a little bit about, because I feel like she's just really contributing in so many ways, very specifically in last game or even the last two games. That's like Niara Sabally, like 19-8 in the first game against the Valkyries, 21-6, and very specifically in last night's game against the Valkyries, the moments where you saw the tempo really rolling seemed to always be initiated by Niara on both ends of the floor. Like, I think Niara kicks the game off with, I think, their first eight baskets. And even in the fake comeback in the fourth quarter, there was a moment where it looked like Niara might actually not like carry them all the way, but is initiating the actions to like put them back in the mix. And so I'll go back to you, Zulfi, because you're already kind of rolling a little bit about it. But what does Niara bring to this team? Because I feel like it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, she's an incredibly versatile player, and I think that's a lot of why Sandy brought her over from the New York Liberty, is to give her an expanded role where if she can stay healthy, you see what the ceiling is for her as a player. And what I really liked, if we're talking about specifically after the All-Star break, is her physicality and just getting downhill. I know, Jerome, you mentioned it in terms of like the tempo need more of that, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like, she has been just driving with her head down, shoulder out, bullying through players in these last couple of games, and it's been awesome to see. She's finished 6 of her 8 attempts in the restricted area. That's something the tempo don't get a lot of so far this season, and because of that, she's also drawing more fouls. Her like foul drawing rate has gone up as well. That's easy points where the tempo right now, again, on offense, take any easy points wherever you can get it. And if it's
I
at
do
the free
miss
throw
15
line,
out of 15 free throws by certain players.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting that, if you can get it from Niara being more physical on the offensive end, I think it's also built up her confidence in terms of her activity. She is taking quick trigger threes. She's relocating. I think those first 8 points you mentioned, Jerome, 2 of them were threes where she kind of was in a first spot. She relocated out of it into the corner and was able to hit a three.
Her step back out in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
To kind of put them back into it. That is a confident shot. That was one where Will and I were both arguing about whether her foot was on the line, but it was like one of those things where it was rule the three, the presence of mind again to like take it, know where you're at, and make that shot is a confident player.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that from her post All-Star break because, again, she got the time off to rest her body and recharge. She came back. Obviously, she was dealing with that injury after getting bumped by Angel Reese. And that was, again, Olaf talked about it in his presser where, like, she was in a lot of pain. So to have that time to really reset and come back healthy, we see the immediate dividends of that. And she's a player that clearly builds off of confidence. And we've talked about it all season. The Tempo need that in the front court especially. And alongside Marina Mabry, if we're going back to the last question of how can you get her more shots, it's, well, make the opponents pay when they're guarding Marina a certain type of way. And when she's seeing 2 on the ball, she has consistently looked to find a Niara Sabally off those overhead passes. And if
that
Niara
was the first bucket of the game, like on the in the open court, they start closing in on Marina just before the half, and she finds Niara right there in the middle, and with a really great touch, just like sets her
It's
feet
like that
and puts
push
it in.
floater
Yeah.
shot, And if
Yeah.
you can keep making defenses pay with that to the point where they have to adjust, well, then there you go. That's a way where Marina gets a bit more freedom and she can start doing things offensively that we normally can see from her. So yeah, Niara Sabali I think has looked awesome since the All-Star break, and that's one of those things where you just want to keep seeing her build that chemistry with Marina and the rest of these players.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Chelsea, kind of building off of that, like Niara is actually one of the players who understands Sandy's system. So like beyond even just like all the physical attributes and talents and skills, it just seems like she has like a really great IQ for that. And like, yeah, let us know a little bit about how that's helped the team and how it's kind of kept them together.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people sometimes forget that like Niara Sabali is kind of the reason the New York Liberty won that championship in 2024. Like you think about that game 5, you think about all she contributed in that sense. Like she can turn it, like when you see the flashes of her potential, obviously, like you said, that's why Brondello brings her over to the Tempo and gives her more of an expanded role. When it comes to, like what... Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Or just in terms of like what exactly she is bringing to it, because like in a team that feels like it is trying to find its identity, it's trying to play within a system, there's something that feels connected when Niara's on the floor with them.
Yeah, and I think it's just like that, having a complete lineup out there. Like you have, I think when Niara's out there, everybody has like a very complete understanding of their roles, because she is that kind of traditional stretch floor big in that sense. And so I think she just brings, like, when she is healthy, and like Zulfi says, she's looked really good since coming back, like she just brings that kind of consistency and just kind of like she brings that stability that I think this team needs a lot, especially as we've talked about this season. Not having a consistent front court has really been a huge issue for them. And so when she gets out there, she's doing all those things, like being able to shoot. She's, taking the pressure off Marina. She's stretching the floor. She's getting downhill. She's being physical. She's getting to the free throw line. It's, it just shows that sometimes, we talk about positionless basketball, we talk about all of this, but sometimes you just got to go back to basics. And I think that's what she brings, is like that very back to basics style of basketball that this team hasn't really been able to play very much this year, because they haven't had a traditional big in for a lot of the time. And so, I think it just kind of I mean, I just had a
she
flash.
She seems to like fill a lot of needs whenever they're like at any given moment. Like as the flow of the game goes, like if they need this 3, she brings this 3. If they need an interior presence, she has that. If she needs defense, any of that. But
it's like someone just commented, bring back positions. Yes. It makes me think of like remember when we were in the trenches and in the Raptors sense, and then they like traded for Jakob Poeltl, and then like people started then he started doing stuff at the rim, and people were like, oh my God, it's a center. What? And it's like that sense of you need basic basketball sometimes. And I feel like that's what Niara brings is, and like if she can have that confidence and to be physical like that, and if she can kind of do that, because I understand, obviously, like she's a player that unfortunately has suffered a lot of injuries in her career and this season, and sometimes I can understand that like that might stop the physicality at some points, but she really does play her best basketball when she's being aggressive under the rim, and she
continues to be there. Like if I were her with the types of injuries I get, and even just within the season, I'd be like, I'm a stretch big now.
Yeah, exactly. No, I feel that. So but she gets
in it.
Yeah, when she's playing her best, it's when she's getting in there and she's really just like using her physicality to her benefit. So more of that, obviously, but I think it just showed, bring back positions really just circles my point.
It's a great Ariana Grande album, and it's a great thing to maybe have on this team. No, absolutely. And I think it's kind of great for Niara to get that break that she really needed to get back into the form. And in that spirit, we're going to take a quick break to welcome the Nation Network's first limited edition collection, a new era of Nation gear. We partnered with Levelwear to elevate the apparel you know and love, bringing you premium quality pieces, new styles, and versatile collections designed for life beyond game day. Introducing the Off-Season Social Club, a collection built for the sports between sports, from polos and premium tees to hoodies and hats. elevated everyday essentials. Every piece is designed with quality, comfort, and performance to take you from the golf course to the patio, weekend trips, and everywhere in between. Because being a sportsman isn't just a season, it's a lifestyle. Visit nationgear.ca, follow Nation Gear on social, and subscribe to our newsletter to be the first to shop new collections, exclusive drops, and everything still to come. There's this like new Levelware partnership with the Nation Network, which is what both Hello and Welcome and Raptors Republic are a part of. And even like Will, Alex, and I just last week got to talk with our team about this incorporation. So, I think some of our fans have already noted that our store right now is closed, which it is, because we were making this transition in. But I think over the course of the next month, we're going to look into bringing back some of our classic with the basics, but maybe also doing some designs as well. Getting
Tempo
to play
Time
with like
merch?
I think we can look into some Tempo Time merch. But there's just a lot of things that I think we want to look into going into ahead of the MNBA season, but like things overhead there. But stay tuned and welcome Levelware. And getting back to the show. So, yeah, we've been talking about all these things, and it's been a lot of positives in terms of just, like, players coming back, seeing all these highlights. But as a reminder, they are still on a 7-game losing streak and are 10 games under 500 and are 6.5 games out of the playoff picture, really looking more toward a draft than the playoffs itself. And, look, we can say health. And health is, I think, more than almost anything, like the major factor that has afflicted the tempo this season. But there are things that we see out there that, yes, maybe informed by that have been, just difficult parts of like watching through a tempo game. Like, I think one thing that has been kind of a classic tempo story of late is great first half. We love the first half. It looks like they're in it. Just last night, up 1 on the Valkyries. It looks like they could carry through. And ironically, the opposite earlier in the season where they would be down and then make these like really great comebacks. But it's the third and fourth where it just kind of feels like the wheels fall off and the things that they hold on to in spurts aren't sustaining throughout. And I think you can attribute it to rebounding is a huge issue, which they are trying to address. But then also just these avoidable mistakes on both sides of the floor. And so I'm going to go to you, Chelsea, first. But just kind of, it's been a conversation that's ongoing with the team. And then, like, going through, and Chelsea just sent me something. I see what you sent me. We'll share that in a second. So just going back to it. Like, it's a conversation that goes around the team. I think it almost comes up every time, whether it's at practice, pregame, postgame with Sandy Rondello. But the big word that kind of goes out, and that's what we have in the lower third here, is details. Details that they want to get on top of, but struggle to for any amount of reasons. I know I said a lot here already. Chelsea, to kick us off here, like, what do you see when you notice those breakdowns that happen in the game?
I think it's a lack of communication sometimes. I think it's a lack. I mean, I keep going back to like the lack of consistency this season. And
for sure.
You think about a lot of these players, they went with a very European roster, which obviously is cool because, we're changing kind of the style of play that is happening in the WNBA. You're bringing in new faces. It's fresh. It's fun. But at the same time, you also have to think about then that means that so many players on this roster are rookies. And you can play a ton in Europe, but it's a different lifestyle than here. In Europe, they play 1, maybe 2 games a week. You're coming to the WNBA, you're playing 3, sometimes 4 games a week. You're practicing on off days. You're traveling. You're changing time zones all the time. It's hard. And I think you mix that with the different style of play. You mix that with the fact that
a lot of them also just came from playing their respective leagues.
Yeah.
Like very similar to Kiki coming out of NCAA. There's no break in between.
Oh, yeah, and that's like the normal thing with women's basketball. So,
of course.
We're never going to use that as a huge excuse. But at the same time, like, you also mix in the fact that, like, there's so much new about this. Like, so many of the players are new. It's an expansion franchise. It's all of these things. And the European players have been very vocal about being exhausted with this schedule and like understand it's so different. And so there's that, but I also think like I think what I'm trying to say is like there needs to be like a going back to basics almost, but like at the
Like
same
positions,
time,
perhaps.
positions perhaps.
Yeah.
But
Bring
at
back
the same
positions.
time, the WNBA is evolving so fast that it's like hard to keep up sometimes with like a going back to basics, keeping up with the trends, keeping up with officiating.
And so
like,
often, like in any like NNBA or WNBA, you always want to be ahead of the curve.
yeah.
Like to have that kind of like that strategic advantage. So to go
Exactly.
back feels like a regression or like that they're going to play ahead of you.
Exactly.
Which can be, yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you think again, like it's just like the lack of, and I'm gonna keep going back to this, but it's like you haven't had a steady lineup on this
No.
team, and it's been so hard for people to understand what their roles are and understand this league and understand like. And Sandy actually has talked about this quite a lot. Like, it's funny, and you learn buzzwords with coaches and players quite a
Sure.
lot, and Darko has a few, and obviously now I've been around Sandy Brondello, but one of her buzzwords is KYP, know your
Yep.
personnel. She says that all the time, KYP, KYP, KYP. And I think, and she's mentioned this a few times, of like, you have players in this league who have played 10 seasons, and every season you're coming in and you don't even have to look at the scout to know, Asia Wilson, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Brianna Stewart, this is what you do, blah, blah, blah.
She said that ahead of the Lynx game where they did go through like their worst loss of the season. But
Yeah.
the question was about Nafisa Collier being back in the lineup and like,
Yeah.
how does that change anything? And she's like, well, we know who Fee is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you bring in all these rookies where this team is truly like maybe half rookies. I don't have them in
Yes.
front of me, but like a third
Even if
at
veterans
least.
in professional women's basketball, they are rookies to the WNBA.
They are rookies to the WNBA and therefore have not studied the scouts of these players. And a lot of these players who have never gone to play in Europe because that trend has become a thing. Whereas some of these players have been like, oh, I know Maria Conde.
I heard
played
of this person. Yeah.
Yeah, or we played against each other in this, and so there is a sense of like they know some of the players, but when you think about a lot of these Nafisas, Asia, these players who haven't played in Europe in the past like 5 years,
Who also happen to be all-time women's basketball
great
players. Yeah.
and then you're like, hey, you're new here, go defend this person, and you have like a few days to learn the scout, and I think like that is something that you learn when you're like, again, when you spend a lot of time with someone like Sandy Brondello and she says these things that you kind of like start knowing the patterns of, know your personnel, know your thing. It's like, to kind of relate it, I guess, to our experience, it's like, say, for example, like you were like, okay, go interview that player, and you have never met that person, you don't know really anything about them, you don't have any time to prep, and you're like
building
okay, now,
even a rapport. Like if you want
Yeah.
to talk about it, the same way a media member tries to build a rapport with a player to be able to feel open to ask maybe more probing questions than just the
Yeah.
surface level, is very similar to the idea of players just finding chemistry together on a court.
finding chemistry together, but also learning how to defend properly other players that they are going
Yes.
to come up against. And so, yeah, that kind of, and then when you play some of these teams for the first time in July and August, because, they played Vegas for the first time at the end of July.
The scheduling has been so weird. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, they played Washington like 4 times already.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, obviously when it's the mid-season and you've never played this team, yeah, you're trying to learn the scout and like all of this stuff, and there's only so much time you have to watch film. There's only so much time. And in this condensed WNBA season, you can only think about the next game, the next day. You have to be very much where your feet are planted. And so I think, yeah, that came up to me as like something of being like, okay, a lot of these players have never had to, think
There's
about
so much to figure out at once.
yeah,
I think
it's a lot.
Kia early in the season said something. I think somebody asked her like, "Oh, like what do you know about like the mystics or like the dream so far? And she's like, I'm gonna learn what I know about this team tomorrow when we look at the scout. Because
Literally.
we've had to focus.
Well,
on
because
this
a lot of
team
these
and
teams
this team and
also
this team.
change their personnel
Yeah.
significantly.
That's another thing about the W
Yeah.
is that the turnover of players is so intense. I mean, honestly, it's been less so this season, I think, because of development
Like,
players.
who can
and-
scout for the Wings this season based off last season?
No one.
Yeah.
Literally no
Like-
one. And we had so
And the
much
Lynx,
change
for that matter, you know?
in the off season.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
moved teams. You have 2 new teams. You have coaches that you've never seen. There was so much coaching overturned too. So you have
Sure.
to like learn people's systems and be, all this stuff. And so yeah, I honestly think if we're talking about details, there's so many of those little things that I feel like people, obviously we have the benefit of being there all the time and we understand how these systems work a little bit more. And so I never want to be like people, I sometimes get frustrated because I'm like, people don't understand what's going on. Like they're so quick
Oh,
to
yeah,
judge
yeah.
online. And this is honestly something I'm learning a lot this season. And I also have to step back and be like, okay, but nobody has the access that you do, Chelsea. Nobody's talking
And also,
to these
no
people
one
every day.
is assigned to watch every second of this team play.
Nobody's assigned to the point where they're at the Olivia Dean concert with their fucking phone up,
I
trying to
think,
watch
like,
the team.
Yeah, I think like that is kind of the part too, and maybe let's frame it that way when I'm going to go to you, Zulfi, is just, a lot of fans who are getting introduced to the WNBA, the tempo and all that, aren't going to be watching the entire season, like every single game, every single second of it, know everything inside out. But when they are attending maybe their 1 or 2 games or watching it for the first time, they're probably wondering some of these things, like especially if they know like basketball, like what is going on here? What are we missing? Why? Who's the player that we should focus on the tempo? And yeah, like kind of going back to this question, just like, what are you seeing? Because you do spend a lot of time kind of reviewing the tape, like when these kind of breakdowns and mental lapses, I would argue, as like happen.
Yeah, I think aside from what Chelsea has mentioned in terms of just like consistency and communication, one of the things I feel like I'm noticing is that the tempo haven't figured out their ideal or preferred speed to play at. And to kind of relate it to an example with the Raptors, and Darko Rajakovic mentioned this phrase, and I wrote about it. This idea of the speed paradox is how fast is too fast before the wheels fall off, right? Like every team has a different best speed that where they start playing at a certain pace, that's good for them. But if you start going faster than that, that's when mistakes happen that you can tend to avoid. And the tempo, I've said, they want to play faster. They want to be up-tempo team, but there's a difference between playing fast and playing rushed. And I think sometimes they fall into this trap of maybe playing more rushed than they want to. I think if you just look at that game against the Valkyries, it was the third quarter coming out of halftime, like you said, Jerome, where they were up. They commit back-to-back turnovers that I felt like they were playing faster than they needed to. Niara Sabali's trying to go through the motions of the action, and she bowls over Veronica Burden for an offensive foul where she wasn't even looking forward and reading the floor. The play after that, I think Maria Conde, she's working a 2-player action with Marina Mabry on the left wing. Before she even turns, she tries to make this one-hand wrap pass that gets picked off by Gabby Williams. Again, like, you don't need to rush yourself in these little situations. And then you see it, to your point, Jerome, why they're avoidable is because they compound immediately with a Kayla Thorne in 3, and then Gabby Williams then picks it off and gets a layup.
It gets
going
away
the
with
other
them
way.
so quickly.
Yeah, and
in
then all
way
of a sudden
that
they're
It
down.
feels like a fever dream. Yeah, like when you see these moments happen, and like typically like in the flow of a basketball game, you think like, okay, there's like 1 or 2 turnovers, but it doesn't feel like it's out of control. What tends to happen, especially in these latter games that we have watched more recently, is especially in that third quarter, like all the things that you just watched as like a good enough data set to say this team understands what it's doing and goes up and is doing like everything that they need to stay competitive in the game. There could be like a 2 or 3 minute stretch and it feels like the game's completely gone at that point. And yeah, I think like all those factors that both of you mentioned really sorry, I totally interrupted you. Did you have more that you wanted to say on that, Zulfi?
No, I think that was just kind of to it as well. Like they just haven't found their their ideal flow in terms
Sure.
of how they want to play or how they want to approach the game. And I know that kind of toggles and varies within a game. Sometimes you want to slow down, sometimes you want to play faster. But it was ironic. I think after the first game of the season, Sandy Brandello used the word lingering. Like the players were lingering too much.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it feels like at times they've tried to overcompensate where there's just kind of like, they're like a bat out of hell and there's no real control.
Like
to the
overplaying
chaos.
to the point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I think they're kind of within that. They need to find out like when to speed up, when to slow down, and I think a lot of that is just reps and playing together. To your point, like the European style is so different than the North American style, and how do you blend the two? Where some players are trying to play a faster pace, and some players are trying to slow things down and break down based on the actions. The WNBA specifically is a very action-based league. There's free-flowing stuff within it, yes, but a lot of the top players here kind of work through certain actions in terms of what they're trying to do and scripted stuff. Versus again, Europeans are kind of pinging the ball around more and kind of playing off advantage creation. So blending that, I think, has been a lot of where we've seen some of these breakdowns happens on both ends of the floor.
You know what? I'm gonna take that last point that you mentioned there and go to our final part here about like what tempo and fans can look ahead to in terms of it. But I'm gonna kick that off with a question that just came up from hearing you both talk about it. When it comes to like this flow, like it's such a good point about watching them at different points, feeling like it's a different team on the court depending on what the personnel is on the court. And I mean only for when it comes to like the tempo and who's playing on the floor. Is there something to be said about the roster construction in that it can feel a little bit split that, like, again, we don't know because we don't have, like, here, I'm just going to pull this quote again from one of Chelsea's write-ups on TSN, but from Coach Brandello, it's my 27th year in this league, and I've never experienced anything quite like this. And that is in reference to just the amount of injuries. Like, 30 games in now, they have not had a single clean injury sheet. And that alone feels like really significant, but especially when you think about the players that are injured and the amount of players at certain times. Like these are key players that are supposed to contribute in the short and long term. All that to say, if we can somehow hypothetically look at, and because this is a looking forward situation, a fully healthy team, I don't know that we have an answer 30 games into the season what exactly the identity of this team is.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that we can necessarily answer that immediately. I guess we would need to have like the reps with like the full roster. But in your estimation, when you look at this, like I'll start with you, Chelsea. What do you think this team is supposed to look like?
I mean, we can talk about what they want to look like, which
Okay,
is,
let's talk about that.
Which is a defense first team. I think that changes quite a lot with Slim in the lineup. I think, the idea was to have her kind of lead the defense as a former all defense player. I think there are parts...
And an important wing defender, which
Yes.
we do not have right now.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think I would say that you're seeing like flashes of what they want to be, which is a very gritty, very resilient, very fight team, which I think is like fun for an expansion team, obviously, because you want... That is like something that really like drives fan engagement. Is like you can be winning by however much, or you could be losing by however much, but the effort is going to be the same.
It actually is what won fans over early in the season. Right before essentially the major injuries to Slim and Kiki, is that they were basically hovering around 500 the whole time.
Yeah.
But you would like think that they were a playoff team fighting for their lives, just how hard they played. Yeah.
Exactly. So like that is a part of it. I think, obviously they want the defense to be a bit better, but I think again that goes back to personnel and communication and consistency and all of that. It's hard to play steady defense when people's roles aren't exactly defined and consistent. And I think they also want to be that like heavy offense team. I think they want to be a team where Marina Mabry is shooting the lights out every night, and it's giving almost like Indiana Pacers, quick pace, go, shoot the lights out, and if you can't keep up with us, then you can't win the game kind of thing.
So you're kind of running them off the court is what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that is kind of the goal, because they do play with that very quick tempo. And so I think that's the goal, and I think that is the very, like, you know, they want to have that 0.5 kind of mentality where they're constantly passing the ball, where they're making defenses chase after them, where they're trying to, again, run the other team off of the court. And I don't think that it's so hard, because we were talking about this before a little bit. It's so hard to think about the future as well, because especially in the WNBA, roster consistency year over year is not.
Well, let's go there. Let's actually go there.
Because, like, you think about.
So if I can interject here, like, we talked about this before the show, but it's also a thing that we probably touched upon going into the season is beyond the fact that the WNBA has so much turnover, and you can see teams really like change up their roster season over season. This is an expansion team. And this is a team that, for the roster that they built together, there are certain players that you can say are cornerstones for the franchise for the long term. And then there are those who are filling positions based on what was available. And this is not a knock on any particular player, but this is just more of a reality of what an expansion team, or how an expansion team works. And so, again, it's a credit to the team that they became such a lovable and cheerable team, like supportable team, that, you know, at any given moment's like, so-and-so cannot possibly leave the team. But that is a reality that is going to happen, and something to look forward to. So to kind of go back to you, to Chelsea, and then we'll throw it to Zulfi, like, tell us a little bit about what probably looks like the outlook maybe in a longer term past this season for this team and its roster.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to think about is that more than any season in the past, there are more players on multi-year contracts, but the way that the Tempo built this roster this season, especially given the time crunch and given their like European scouting and how they were doing that, was to bring a lot of players in on training camp contracts, which then get converted into 1-year non-guaranteed contracts. So a lot of those players, the Temple will have the rights to, so they'll have first dibs on offering them a qualifying offer in February when free agency opens. But at the same time, they also have the option to not give them a qualifying offer. And again, 1-year contract, like those players can accept those qualifying offers. A lot of these, I mean, these European players could decide not to come back. There's like there's a lot of turnover in terms of who comes and who doesn't, especially these players.
It's a bit of an experiment of having, especially the European players here, to see how it works, not just for the Tempo and the WNBA, but also for these players.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A lot of it is informed by the CBA and the available money, where now it's actually even considered an option. Yeah. But now beyond the money part, which used to be the part that like separates like the deal breaker, it's also like, do they want to play here when their natural homes are in Europe?
Yeah, and so that is something to consider. You also have to consider the free agency market next season and how it's going to be a lot more detailed. There's going to be more time for people to consider their options. There's going to be more time for teams to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not scout, but like court people and try and bring them over. There's a few huge free agents.
The Toronto, specifically for the Toronto Tempo, they've actually had a season to be a part of the WNBA and actually interact with players and look ahead toward these things.
And have players come here and see, like, oh, this is what Toronto's actually like. Because a lot of these players, you have to think, have never traveled to Canada or didn't know anything about being here, right? Then they talk, like, players talk. And, like, Unrivaled is another thing you have to think about. So you have to think about free agency. Then you think about the draft and the draft lottery and where the Tempo will be placed into that. And right now, I think
do you want to actually look into so Chelsea sent us an image which I don't know if you heard earlier. We all kind of stopped to giggle about for a quick minute, but
let's look at it.
For someone who had been like covering the Raptors with Hello and Welcome for the last couple of years, up until the season, they were a lottery team. And so we would just resort to using the lottery, like the draft lottery generator, to see like where the Raptors would land. And so Chelsea did us a favor of doing it already behind the scenes, but to present the image.
I do this daily. Let's be so for real.
Congratulations, based on at least today's, or this one that was like sent to us.
Yeah.
Juju Watkins, number 1 to the Toronto Tempo.
When you
Please.
go to the actual like thing, the Toronto Tempo currently have the 3rd best odds.
Which are those are
Not
good
bad.
odds.
Not bad. And when you think about the WNBA draft lottery, so there's a few things that are like yet to be determined here, because the WNBA takes the past 2 seasons of record into account when they're forming these odds, right? So you think about last season, and the Connecticut Sun, for example, we're thinking about 2025, but 2024. In 2024, they made the semifinals of the WNBA,
Right.
of the playoffs. The next year, they're like tanking, essentially. And so those two things are put together. The Connecticut Sun end up getting the last pick in the lottery, right? But obviously, the Tempo have only been around this season. And so 1 year of data are they going to weigh it differently, or we don't know, because of course last season the Golden State Valkyries made the playoffs, so that wasn't a thing we had to deal with.
It wasn't in consideration,
Yeah, so I think currently,
and we're also in there with the Portland Fires, so it affects 2 teams, not just
2
one.
teams, exactly. So I think they're just kind of going off the data that they have, but from what we know right now, Toronto has the 3rd best odds. From what we know, there's a lot, and because the WNBA lottery right now is going to be 7 picks as opposed to the NBA, which is a lot more, the odds kind of it's very different. Like a team like Toronto could leap up to first with the 3rd best odds. Like it's not something, and so I think so much of team building at this point is going to depend on what happens in that draft lottery.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, if Juju Watkins. And that's the other thing, too, is you have to think about the women's game is that, like, we don't know who's going to declare pretty much until, like, March.
Yeah.
But Juju Watkins is technically eligible. And
there's
I
a
feel
chance
like
that she takes 1 more year after. But
there is also a chance that she uses her redshirt year and comes out in 2028. That makes the 2028 draft absolutely bonkers.
Juju or Sarah Strong debates are going to be a problem.
If you get a player like Sarah Strong or Juju Watkins 2nd in the WNBA draft, that is the best franchise.
It's one of those ones that could go into like, you could be getting the Kevin Durant to the Greg Oden.
Literally.
And like you never like granted, we do not want either of those players to have a Greg Oden future. I want to be clear about that.
Let's say Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon in that draft.
That's a really good one there too. But like even Jordan went he didn't go 2nd,
he
right?
Went 3rd. He went 3rd.
There you
Hakeem
go.
went 1st, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just wild to think about. So, but anyways, regardless, like if Juju likes where the first pick ends up going, then she could go there. And if you get, and I understand a lot of people coming into the W maybe don't follow women's college basketball, maybe don't understand the gravity of some of these names that we're tossing out around, and don't get, like I'm locking into like I've been locked into college coverage, but I think hopefully the idea is,
and
that
I've been locked
into
into Chelsea's college coverage.
TSN has March Madness this year, so lock in. But anyways, Juju Watkins, when I tell you the gravity of Juju Watkins as a player, as a franchise cornerstone,
as a name, it's just a cool ass name too.
It's a great name.
She up there with Caitlin Clark, up there with Paige Beckers, up there with the best, up there with Diana Taurasi, up there with these players that if your franchise has the opportunity to draft, there is no question about it, you do that.
We will happily delete this segment where we try to fix the team for the rest of the season if it means that we are guaranteed Juju Watkins.
Getting that pick changes the trajectory of this franchise forever. And so a lot of the offseason moves are going to depend on where they hit in the lottery. Don't get me wrong, the rest of the lottery is great. You have Hannah Hidalgo, you have Madison Booker, you have a lot of these players that the Tempo, I'm sure, would be very grateful to draft, but Juju Watkins is on a different level.
It's a generational player.
That's a generational player. And so I think a lot of the future of this team has to do with that. I think a lot of the future of this team has to do with free agency and where that lands for them. The draft as a whole, depending on where their other picks end up. And so this roster is going to be very different. And I think the first thing is just get through the season, get Slim healthy, get Kiki healthy, get these franchise current core players healthy. then you assess what's coming in the off season, and then you kind of retool. And I think going back to the original point, this roster is not going to be the same next season. There's so many factors, the Europeans, the draft, the free agency, all of that. And I think that, I think that's something that we have to start coming to terms with, is that like they have a style of basketball they want to play. They have a current roster that they're trying to implement, they're trying to, I mean, the idea was to be competitive, and I think we're at August 5th right now. We have about 13 games left or so in the season.
Which you're saying,
The
like,
playoffs-
13 games with 10 games under 500. That means if they went 13-0, which we know is not going to happen, that would only bring them 3 games above 500.
Exactly. And so the playoffs right now, I think, are looking more and more far away the further we get into this stretch. And so, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to start looking towards the future a little bit and to start, and don't get me wrong.
It's just a realistic thing. Like, to be fair, this isn't like, as much as we cannot contain our excitement at the idea of having Juju Watkins being on the Toronto Tempo, this is also just a reality that we're facing in this moment. 30 games in, you're 10-20, you're pretty far out of the playoff race, and nothing appears to be trending in a way, whether it is because of team performance and especially because of health, like, will tell you that this is going to be some sort of bounce back situation. Like, we would all love to see that for the sake of the team, for the sake of Sandy's record of being in the playoffs. But realistically, you have to consider the fact that the draft is in play. And like the last bit about the draft before I go to Zulfi, just because, like, again, as a relatively new fan, even though it's been a couple of seasons at this point, I don't know, sometimes I watch a draft and I'm just like, I'm sure the odds were the odds that they were, but, like, do we just need to be, like, in really good graces with Kathy Engelbert to get the first pick? Because, like, how does AZ Fudd get to the Wings? Just explain that to me.
And then Houston's coming in next year,
how do the Wings get Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd, I guess?
I mean,
like,
how
together?
does the Dallas Mavericks get Cooper Flagg after the trading Luka? It's the same thing. That city, to me, I'm never going to be able to visit Dallas with a pure heart, unfortunately.
Yeah. Even though I love the Wings with all my heart. But all of it's okay. So, like, Chelsea, you gave us like a really good breakdown as to kind of like a bit of like the long-term future. But like you mentioned, there's still games left in the season. And so, Zulfi, I'm going to give you the unenviable task of finding us the silver lining of looking ahead to the end of whenever this season does end. What can we look forward to, or what can we be hopeful about?
Yeah, I just find it hilarious that this question started with that, and we had like a 20-minute talk about the draft and tanking and moving forward, because that is where things are. To your point,
that is where things are.
That is very telling. But, like, if you're looking at things to look, and obviously so, she's amazing. But if you're looking at things to look forward to for this season, I think I'm kind of gonna hedge on that a little bit and say it's both looking forward to the rest of the season and looking forward. We have to go back to where we started, the Aneesah Morrow trade. I think if you look at what Monica said in bringing that type of player in, it's to look forward towards the future, because she becomes a player that's under team control. You can build around, like, to Chelsea's point, like, the Tempo only have like 3 players under contract beyond 2027. And, like, 2 of those players are older. If you look at Marina and Slimer, who are contract for 2 seasons, the Euros aren't. They're going to have to figure that out. The rest of them that are under long-term control are rookies, and those are players you're going to want to build around, or it's Aneesah, in her case, a second-year player. So it's finding opportunities for those youngsters to, I think, get more reps, kind of build that continuity and chemistry. So then when you are talking about down the line a couple seasons in terms of who you're adding, say, through the draft or free agency, well, like, who are they going to be joining on this team? You talked about, like, we don't know what this roster is going to look like, but we have some idea of who's the quote-unquote
Let's drop
core.
a couple of names, like, collectively. So we got Kiki.
Yeah.
Aneesah.
I'll throw Niara. Tioni is there, the second-round pick. Niara, I'll say.
And then Marina and Slim.
Kinda.
Yeah.
They're older.
And Marina
and
Slim, at least we know in terms of the fact of, like, they're signed for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, whether the team decides to use the final year to, like, deal as a thing in the offseason or otherwise, that's beyond our understanding. But, like, as we record right now, those feel like the only real, like, secure names that we could say, like, will be carrying on through the end of the season into the next.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that's like it's pretty wide open. Like for all the players that you have seen, and
They have
like
the
for
rights to a lot of them.
Sure.
Which
Yeah.
I think is a
Sure.
factor.
But like
sure.
to say like the way a lot of it is fashion is they have the rights and they have the flexibility, which is why we are talking about it this way.
But like to the point of like looking forward, I think like we said, coming into the season, there was this idea of what this team wanted to be, and they were a young franchise, but they were also the fifth oldest roster in the WNBA because they wanted to be competitive sooner rather than later. And like you both have mentioned, there seems to have been a bit of a pivot here with making a trade like this, bringing in a young cost control player to build around because. Well, now they've had no choice but to start looking towards the future, and I think they've started that process with this trade, and you're going to see probably more of it towards the end of the season here. The further away they get from a playoff hunt, you're going to see more of what Kiki Rice can do with the ball in her hands. You're going to see more of Aneesah Morrow and like her expanding her ceiling and what that looks like, and whether it's like Nyara Sabali, we've talked about doing everything on both ends. Can she shoot more threes consistently? All that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for things to look forward to, I'm hoping at least is like, what can we see from the younger players, or even as some of the quote-unquote core veterans like Julie Alamon, like can she be more of a play finisher for this team? I have dove into the numbers, and I think she's incredible at scoring the basketball when she actually tries. So can you see some of that?
Would love to
her?
see Julie shoot more.
Yeah.
I think I would love to see Sandy and this team try to make her shoot more, like put her as a play finisher and more scripted stuff. She's incredibly efficient. So like those little like micro decisions and micro skills, like can we expand upon that if we're looking for things to look forward to? And not to be cliche, I think get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like I think that's like what this team needs to go through as an expansion franchise. Things are probably going to look worse before they look better. And I think that's what is kind of normal for the expansion franchise history. Again, the Valkyries are very much the exception, not the norm. And I think it's a lot.
I think the Tempo and the Fire were both plagued by following up the Valkyries
100%.
season. Yes.
But I think a lot of it, like, it's what spurs the decisions that you need to make to get on the right track. Like, I can't go back in time and predict it would necessarily have gone differently or the same, but I think a lot of what we've seen from the Tempo this season is what motivated Monica Wright-Rogers to dangle a couple of picks and look to make a move and eventually add a player like Aneesah Morrow. Even though you can say, because of injuries or X, Y, and Z, we can't draw conclusions on this roster, I think she was comfortable seeing that maybe the uncertainty of this roster moving forward with the older players and the fact that there's clearly a lack of front court depth is what motivated to make a move like this. So if you're going to go through these growing pains, at least you know it's going to hopefully end up in getting clear conclusions towards the end of the season for this front office, which again, so far, I have faith in. Like based on what I've seen from the decisions that have been made, I have faith in they're going to go through eating these lumps and kind of coming out of it stronger for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, to kind of like summarize like all that and just like putting it into context, especially like
There's no
as
expansion this year, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
As Hello and Welcome, like we typically cover the Raptors, and you know we, and then we have been existing we're going into our third season now, but a lot of the frustrations that you would see in terms of its roster building, its roster fixing, that continue onward. You know, if we're saying like from the year that Scotty Barnes was drafted in 2021, where they were facing a similar situation of a lot of veterans that should be making them playoff contenders, and then a lot of young players who might give them more long-term future success, but the balance of them being a thing that really caused a lot of conflict and friction within the team and within the fan base. Like what we are seeing in a much quicker and more actionable version is a season where they kind of came in with that, where they had the flexibility of deciding what this team is. And I think they have a better idea of what it is, what the ceiling is like. Of course, again, injuries, all that, but like still knowing and then taking action immediately. The Aneesah Morrow trade that we have like says that right away, that they're willing to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And do so, thankfully, at no cost. So
Still gooped by that.
You know, whatever it is, I guess like one thing that you can always do is just find because that's the other thing. Sometimes in the WNBA, you really have like a derp team just like going through the entire season.
The
You're like,
Sun are very much a derp team right now.
Like, it's not like a thing
is.
that they are consistently that, like with respect to the franchise. But each season, there's always a team where I think you realize, like, what are you doing? I guess
The
trade for
Chicago's
Kelsey
guy
Plum.
Moving to Houston.
You know?
You're
Just saying.
moving to Houston.
And so I guess to those ends, it's just like that is also kind of those, market inefficiencies that you can take advantage of. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but all of it to say, yeah, like it's so funny. And I'm going to close out on this and we can talk a little bit about it. But, I went to that Lynx game in Scotiabank Arena and they got
was there.
washed. We all, yeah.
there.
And I'm taking the streetcar back and it's really fun. Like, I think we've talked about it all season. It's so cool to see Tempo fans out in the city. And you would think after getting completely washed like that, it would be kind of like a down feeling, all this stuff. And it's just like nothing but joy about having this team getting to watch us, all of this. Almost to the point that I'm almost like, oh, we're all on something because this is delusional to like be this happy together and like, make connections, make friends, talk about things. But that is the reality of what it is, because as I like asked you this question about looking ahead, like when you think about what the Tempo have achieved so far already,
Yeah.
like if you told me at the end of the season, like remove record, remove any of that you would have record-breaking moments. You'd have an actual legitimate, not like a WNBA All-Star talent, an actual WNBA All-Star with one who could also, had it not been for injuries, also have been one too. If you told me that we would see WNBA history live in person, I'd be like, this is an incredible expansion season. But that said, there is still like, season left. And yeah, I mean, like, I just want to say, I thank you both for kind of like setting us off for like where we have gone so far, what exactly they need to do. And then, yeah, just kind of ride it out until... Yeah, go ahead, Chelsea.
No, I was gonna. It's funny because I was sitting there, we're talking about future and on the court stuff, and I was literally thinking what you were saying. I was like, I do want to make the point of like, if we're talking about what to look ahead for the rest of the season, I think I'm of the belief of like, this season for me has always just been about celebrating the fact that we're finally here. Yeah. Like celebrating the fact that we finally have this team that we
and we're more than happy to be here this season.
Yeah, like
we got more than that already.
Yeah, we're playing
and
with
it's not
house
even
money
over.
at this
Like we
point.
will do proper retrospectives at the end
yeah,
of the season, but yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about all of the mentee bees that went into this season, and I've had so many. But like, it's like, no, to me, it's just like, regardless, I went into this season and I remember being asked quite a lot of like, what's the ceiling of this team? Are they going to make the playoffs? Are they going to do all of this, blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, if they do, cool. But if not, like, also cool, because we have a WNBA team in Toronto and my friends are getting paid and I'm getting paid and we're talking about, women's sports, and we have a media room full of, new upcoming journalists who are crushing it. And we have people like Marina Mabry who are, finally getting the opportunities that they've wanted their whole careers, and we're at All-Star and the Toronto Tempo
across the board, player, organizational, because we have a lot of friends who work there, and media-wise, everyone seemed to have gotten like an opportunity to really flourish beyond what they normally would do, and it's incredible to see.
And it's cool, and you can see the community coming together, not just in us working in that, but just like you can see the community at the games, and you can see the people starting to form the relationships, and you can see the people, just like genuinely finding the joy in things and like building a very strong community that is still within the basketball community of Toronto, but is different in a sense because the WNBA and the women's sports community is just different. So I think just the joy of it all, like you said, like on the streetcar, seeing people in the street with Tempo gear, seeing people, getting to chat with fans quite a lot it's just fun. Like I think this season is less about obviously we want to win and we want to be competitive, but it's also about the like celebration of the fact that like it took a long time to get here, and so now just like enjoy it a little bit.
We're in really good spirits for a team that's 10-20 right now.
This is supposed to be I think we talk about this a lot as people who work in the industry, as like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, you have a fun job, and like for people who this is their hobby, like it's fun. Like, find the joy in some of these things. And so I think that's where my head has been at this the past few weeks.
I would say I'm in the same spirits as you, Chelsea, and like I think fans have treated it that way for pretty much the entire season, and that's the right way to approach it. I think the players in the organization are gonna get to the basketball of it all eventually, and they have, and that's because they're ultra competitors. But I think having that like big picture perspective from a fan's perspective or from a media perspective is important because again, I'll use another cliche: Rome wasn't built in a day. If you want to say that, whatever you want,
Sure.
but like this thing isn't gonna happen overnight.
We
and
play
it's
in a
gonna take-
coliseum.
I mean, we do. Yeah, there we go. But like, yeah, like I think like you said, it's been a breath of fresh air because there's been so much anticipation getting to this point. People like yourself, Chelsea, have put in so many years of work getting to this point for it to finally happen and culminate. I think is something worth celebrating for this season. There's always going to be time to talk about the basketball of it all, and we will continue to do that. I know you do it here. I know I do it with my videos as well. But I think it's always worth remembering that like year one isn't the end all be all of it. It literally is the beginning. And 5 years from now, you're not going to look back and talk about these injuries. You're going to talk about it was year one where you had an all-star, you had Marina Mabry score 53 points, you set an attendance record, X, Y, and Z, and there's still probably more history to be made throughout this season. And I think that's truthfully all you're going to remember. And I think that's the way you should remember
One
it.
thing
In
we
the
need to
moment,
do is we need to beat the Portland Fire.
that would be
Thursday
Yes.
or in Vancouver.
We need to beat the Portland Fire.
Yeah.
I would accept, I guess, a split difference on the season, but I do want to win this season against the Portland Fire if possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got a game in Portland and then you got a game in Vancouver, which if Montreal was any indication, Vancouver is going to be a time. So
Yeah.
But yeah.
That building looks cool, too.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, Zulfi, you mentioned it. Where can people find your very great work on the Tempo?
Thank you very much for that segue. At Raptors Republic or on social media at Zulfi_Sheikh. That's ZULFI_SHEIKH. I'm always there yapping about basketball in some capacity, especially.
Yeah, don't
with
just
Tempo.
watch Tempo Time. Also watch Tempo Talk. Yeah.
Tempo Talk, yeah, no.
Thank you very much.
Zulfi is truly an essential follow for our Tempo community. I'll say it again.
And another essential
yeah.
follow is Chelsea Leite. And where can they find you?
At Chelsea Leite on Twitter, on Instagram, at tsn.ca, where that coverage lies. Yeah, we don't have a home broadcast for a bit, so I'll be writing my little heart out. And yeah, online as well.
You and
but-
Olivia Dean writing your
Me and
hearts out.
Olivia Dean. Yeah. So yeah, that's where you can find me. TSN.
Yeah, and you can obviously find us here at Tempo Time, which we thank you for taking the time with us, and we will see you next time.